Pirate crews operated under a payment system fundamentally different from any military or merchant vessel of the age. While the Royal Navy paid sailors fixed wages and merchant ships offered employment contracts, pirates rejected both models entirely. They created something unique, something that, by the standards of the 17th and 18th centuries, was radical. Pirates were not salaried. They received no guaranteed income, no steady paycheck, no safety net whatsoever. Instead, they worked entirely on commission, sharing equally in whatever plunder they managed to seize. This no prey, no pay philosophy meant that a pirate's fortune depended entirely on the success of his crew and the value of the ships they captured. It was a system built on shared risk, shared reward, and a level of economic equality that wouldn't be seen in legitimate business for centuries to come. Pirates were, in essence, venture capitalists of the seas, investing their lives and labor into an enterprise where everyone who survived would profit. But how exactly did this work? How were shares determined? Who got what? And how did crews ensure fairness in such a chaotic profession? The foundation of pirate economics rested on the principle that the plunder belonged to no single person, not even the captain. Every captured item, every coin of gold, every jewel and bar of silver became part of a collective pool. Once a merchant vessel was taken, the crew faced a critical decision. Was the prize valuable enough to pursue and seize? This wasn't made by the captain alone. Experienced pirates understood that capturing a ship required tremendous effort, risk of death, and damage to their own vessel. If a potential target didn't carry cargo worth thousands of pieces of eight, the venture simply wasn't worthwhile. Crews discussed targets, debated prospects, and voted on which ships to pursue. Once a prize was taken, the real work began. Every item had to be assessed, evaluated, and given a monetary value. The total value was then divided among the crew according to a predetermined formula outlined in what pirates called the Articles of Agreement. These articles were not casual or informal. They were binding legal contracts that every crew member had to sign or mark with an X, swearing an oath of allegiance to the terms. Eking an article could result in loss of share, physical punishment, or even abandonment on an island with nothing but a cutlass and a bottle of rum. The Articles of Agreement represented one of the most sophisticated organizational documents of the age. Years before joint stock companies formalized profit sharing among investors, pirates had already created systems of distributed ownership and democratic governance. The articles specified everything: the share each rank received, what happened to the injured, how disputes were settled, punishments for theft or drunkenness, and the conditions under which shares could be forfeited. Every willing person aboard had to agree to these terms before embarking on a voyage. The process was serious. A crew member would approach the articles, read them aloud, or have them read aloud by an officer, and then make his mark. Some could sign their names, others simply made an X or a thumbprint. Then Camille, the oath. Typically taken with one hand on a crossed cutlass and pistol, the oath formally inducted the new member into the pirate crew, entitling him to vote on matters of importance, to bear arms, to receive his share of plunder, and to participate in the governance of the vessel. This was not theater. These oaths bound men together in ways that transcended normal employment. Breaking the articles meant breaking a sacred compact with one's shipmates. The compensation structure, however, was not entirely equal, despite the egalitarian reputation of pirate crews. A complex hierarchy determined how plunder was divided. The captain received substantially more than ordinary seamen. On Edward Lowe's ship, the articles specified that the captain was entitled to 2 full shares, while the master received 1.5 shares, the mate received 1.25 shares, and the doctor, boatswain, and gunner each received 1.25 shares as well. Every other crew member received exactly 1 share. This variation reflected the different responsibilities and skills required for each position. The captain bore the weight of leadership. The quartermaster managed the finances and distribution, and specialized craftsmen like the carpenter, surgeon, and gunner possessed irreplaceable expertise. The carpenter sometimes received a fixed stipend of 100 to 150 pieces of 8 instead of shares, while the surgeon, who had to provide his own medical supply, lies and treat catastrophic battle wounds, might earn 200 to 250 pieces of 8. These fixed amounts were particularly generous, reflecting how valuable a skilled surgeon was to a ship constantly engaged in combat. What made the pirate payment system truly revolutionary was the disability compensation included in the articles. Pirates understood that their work was dangerous. Men lost limbs, eyes, and ears. Some were crippled permanently by injury or disease. The articles set aside a portion of all plunder to compensate those who suffered permanent injury during a voyage. Loss of a right arm was worth approximately 600 pieces of 8, the equivalent of $60,000 in modern currency. Loss of a left arm was worth 500 pieces of 8, slightly less because a left-handed pirate was more valuable. The loss of a right hand, a leg, or an eye each had their own compensation amounts. A man who lost a joint in combat received 400 pieces of 8. Smaller injuries, like the loss of a finger, might be worth 100 pieces of 8 or sometimes a lesser amount depending on the articles of that particular ship. This insurance system was remarkable. No merchant sailor received such protection. No Royal Navy seaman could expect compensation for dismemberment. Pirates, operating outside the law, outside the bounds of traditional maritime employment, had created something more humane than the legitimate maritime industry of their own era. The quartermaster held a position of extraordinary importance in this system. While the captain commanded the ship in battle and held ultimate authority over the crew, the quartermaster wielded tremendous power in peacetime and in financial matters. The quartermaster was, in effect, a checks and balance against the captain's authority. He could veto the captain's orders in matters of plunder distribution and day-to-day ship governance. He was elected by the crew, sometimes even given a title like president or chief, and he answered to the crew rather than to the captain. His responsibilities were vast. He had to assess the value of captured cargo, organize the division of plunder, settle disputes between crew members, administer punishments for infractions, and ensure that every man received his proper share. When a cargo consisted of diverse goods, sugar, cloth, weapons, exotic spices, trade goods of uncertain value, the quartermaster would often organize an auction among crew members. Pirates would bid on items they particularly wanted, and the proceeds would be added to the total pool before final division. This system ensured fair valuation and allowed men to acquire goods at prices they thought reasonable. The quartermaster was essentially the chief financial officer of the venture, and his honesty and fairness determined whether a crew remained united or fractured into mutiny and betrayal. Henry Morgan's career provides the most thoroughly documented example of how pirate payment systems functioned in practice. Morgan, a Welsh privateer holding a letter of marque from the English crown, conducted some of the most ambitious raiding operations of the 17th century. His exploits in Panama, Maracaibo, and Portobello generated enormous wealth. When Morgan recruited for his famous Panama expedition of 1671, word spread throughout the Caribbean that this captain was offering shares in a venture of unprecedented scale and potential. 2,000 men in 37 ships answered his call. This massive mobilization demonstrated the appeal of pirate ventures among sailors who had few options for economic advancement. Morgan's raids were carefully planned joint stock operations. The Panama venture, his most famous, captured treasure exceeding 100,000 pounds. The plunder was divided according to the agreed articles, with officers receiving multiple shares and ordinary sailors receiving their single portion. Even on the low end, historical records suggest that individual crew members averaged about $20,000 per head in modern currency from Morgan's ventures, a substantial sum for a few years of work. Morgan himself accumulated such wealth that at his death, his personal estate was valued at over 5,000 pounds, the equivalent of more than 1 million pounds in modern currency. He was eventually knighted and appointed lieutenant governor of Jamaica, a remarkable trajectory from pirate captain to colonial administrator. The economic model that pirates created was, in many ways, more equitable than the legitimate maritime industries of the era. A ship's carpenter on a merchant vessel earned a fixed wage, regardless of the cargo's value. A sailor on a naval vessel received his pay from the government regardless of whether he captured enemy ships. But a pirate sailor's earning potential was unlimited. A single successful raid on a wealthy merchant vessel or a valuable treasure ship could generate returns far exceeding what years of legitimate employment could produce. This incentive structure aligned the interests of every crew member with the overall success of the mission. Everyone benefited from careful target selection, disciplined tactics, and ruthless pursuit of valuable prizes. This alignment of interests created a powerful motivation that kept crews cohesive, at least until the plunder was spent. And pirates did spend it, almost immediately. Ships would return to port, and crews would scatter into taverns, brothels, and markets. The wealth accumulated from dangerous raids and violent encounters would vanish in weeks or months. This rapid consumption meant that pirates rarely accumulated long-term wealth unless they survived long enough to participate in multiple successful ventures or rose to a captain's rank. For ordinary seamen, piracy was a speculative venture, a high-risk, high-reward alternative to the precarious wages of legitimate maritime labor. It offered something unique to men with little else, a genuine opportunity to become wealthy, to gain respect among peers, and to participate in the governance of their vessel. These factors combined to make pirate crews among the most democratic and economically mobile organizations of their age, a remarkable achievement for men operating outside the law and the bounds of civilized society.